Welcome to this short film about using World War I artefacts to bring the period to life with me, Dr. Eric Grigg from the History Department here at PG.
Talk about some interesting artefacts relating to World War One. Hey, why not? In Lincoln, especially the home of the tank. Now, the first one I've got is pre-World War One. This is a lovely map I got. British involvement in World War One happened basically after the Germans violated Belgian neutrality, but the actual global conflict started in the Balkans, and this map was meant to explain the Balkan question. And it's beautifully made and incredibly detailed, showing all the changes in the borders in the Balkans, because someone obviously thought, haha, if we map it really closely, we'll understand it. But so anyone who lived through the early 90s knows that the Balkans is a interesting area, and just mapping places does not necessarily mean you understand what's going on there. But an interesting map from 1908 of the Balkan Peninsula and the changes in the maps there. So 1914, the war kicks off. Lots of new technology in the war, one of which was aeroplanes. And interestingly, we've got a book here called Aircraft in the German War. And of course, it's not in the First World War because they didn't know there was going to be a second one. But it's aircraft in the German War, and big description of different methods of flying and attacking and using planes, as you can see here. Interesting thing about this book is it's printed in 1914. So war kicks off, someone researches this, publishes and prints this all within a couple of months of the war kicking off, and how prophetic it was about air power, which did become very, very important. Now, of course, Lincoln is the home of the tank. That's where the first tank was made. I've got my model here of my it's a Renault FT-17 tank, which was the most common tank, as far as widely produced tank in World War One. Lovely little model. It's my birthday present this year. Love it. I've got here a postcard I found amongst my grandparents' stuff, and it's a tank visiting a school in North London. And if you look very closely, which you probably can't do on this video, you'll notice that the tank isn't real. It's made of cardboard or wood. So what they did was they made a tank and they sent it round to schools as a fundraising thing, and this got made into a postcard that you could send to people of the tank visiting your school. Now, found this amongst my grandparents' stuff. The grandparents who had this postcard lived in North London, so I wonder whether one of them appears as one of the blobs in the picture, which is the kids. So there's a tank. So all these new weapons, planes, tanks, a lot of them were produced in Lincoln, and they were produced by women. Lots of men were at the front. So there we go. There's a replica of a munitionette's uniform. Now the munitionette's uniform had no metal badges on it, so I've got a wooden badge here, button rather, so that there's no sparks, because there was lots of explosives and you didn't want the factory to blow up. So a copy of a munitionette's uniform. When the war kicked off in 1914, lots of people volunteered, so much so they had to raise the height of the volunteers to stop getting overwhelmed. By 1916, fewer and fewer people were volunteering, so they started to conscript. Most people were okay. A few people said, we really, really object to this, and they said, okay, we'll let you do stuff that's not involving killing, so you can join, I don't know, the Royal Army Medical Corps and be stretcher bearers. And there was a school in Lincoln Christ Hospital School, that from 1915 to 1919 was a hospital. Some absolutists said, look, I don't want anything to do with the war. And one of them, Fenner Brockway, became later a famous politician, ended up in Lincoln prison. People were reluctant to join into the war because of obviously all the death and destruction, and the trenches on the Western Front were not a very nice place to be. And the last thing you wanted to get was one of these, a memorial plaque. This was sent to someone because their husband, father, son had died in the war. So a bit of a sad thing. One of these memorial plaques. Now, the local regiment, the Lincolnshires, their symbol is the Sphinx. One of the early battle honours was fighting in the Nile Valley during the Napoleonic Wars. So that's a cap badge. This is an ordinary badge, and this one is one of mine. It's a general service uniform button that goes on your uniforms. Now, festival is about archaeology, battlefield archaeology. Battlefield archaeology is very different to normal archaeology because you very severe chance you can dig up bones, and as soon as you hit bodies, it changes the archaeology. You have to get people in, you get forensics in, and you have to treat the body with respect. Now, of course, in World War I sites, you're not only potential digging up a body, but you could be digging up a body that's related to someone, not just related to someone, but related to someone who knew them. I met people that fought in World War I. My parents met loads of people that fought in World War I. So the chances are you could be digging up someone that people know, which makes you have to be quite respectful. The plough inadvertently digs up lots of things on the Western Front because there was stuff produced in industrial quantities. You find things, and if this was Britain, I would have gone a bit of a tractor, but I think this is a piece of World War I material because I found it next to Trons Wood on the Somme. Trons Wood, there was a horrendous fighting there. Why was I looking for a bit of shrapnel? What's this bit of shrapnel mean to me? Well, I was looking because I went over to research my great-granddad, other side to that lot. My great-granddad, who Frederick John William Mitchell, there's a lovely picture of him there, who served at the Somme. We have his diary. I always say it's his diary from the Somme, but it's from January, February, March, and the Somme was later in the summer. So as soon as the battle kicked off, he's obviously too busy to write his diary. It's interesting, his diary. He's in the artillery. They're firing between about 9 and 12. What generally happens, if you want to hit the enemy, you fire in the dawn and dusk where there's a stand to in case there's an attack. Or you fire when people are having a breakfast or lunch or dinner where you can see the smoke from the little cookhouses. But they're firing at points where everyone's undercover. Because at the beginning of his diary, he's in a cold sector where it's a live and let live system. As time goes on, you get trench raids, you get little artillery duels, someone fires at the wrong point and hits someone, so you start firing back, and his sector becomes hot, where they're generally trying to kill each other. And as soon as I sort of worked that out by analysing his diary, it became quite interesting to me, the fact that, you just presume in war everyone's trying to kill each other all the time, but no, they were trying to live and let live, and, they'd get up, they'd have their stand to in the morning at dawn, they'd eat their breakfast, they'd fire off a couple of shells, knowing that the Germans were all in their dugouts, and have their lunch, and then fire a couple of shells in the afternoon, and then dinner, bit of time off, and then go to bed. So no one's trying to kill each other. As time goes on and the authorities insist on all trench raids and firing at each other and trying to hit each other, the sector becomes warm. Got a lovely postcard he sent back home. These are loads of these were produced in World War I, and it's got the flags of the Allies. So it's got Italy, France, Britain, Belgium, and Russia on there. So there we go. Now, a lot of items are produced in the war, and people call it trench art. So I've got some examples here of trench art. And people think they're made in the trenches, and they're generally not made in the trenches. There are some clues on some of them. This is an ashtray where you can keep your matchbox in the top. It's made from the base of a shell case, an 18-pounder fired in 1915. I know that because it says it on the bottom. It was produced in Abbeville in France, and I know that because it says it on the top. And it was produced, souvenir of the Great War, from Austrian prisoner. So that was produced by a prisoner. This is quite common. These bits of trench art where people are using old discarded bits of shells are often made by convalescing soldiers, people behind the front, or prisoners of war. Sometimes they were sort of mass made and sold to give money for convalescing and ex-soldiers. So this is a lovely ashtray. I've got another ashtray here. These were produced for a long time after the war, because this has got a picture of the Menin Gate in Ypres, which was built quite a long way after the war. So the war didn't kill you, the smoking probably would have. This is made out of a nice shell case, and it's got a couple of bullets sticking out of it as a candlestick holder. You can tell it's a shell case from the bottom. So the chances are that is not made while someone's under fire in a trench. It's made behind enemy lines. Now these little U-shaped things, very interesting. You find quite a lot of these. This one says it's a French 75mm shell from Verdun, March 1915. And on it there's a rather crude picture and says, "Well, Fritz, what do you think of Paris?" As an injured German soldier is talking to a civilian. So what are these for? Well, these are so your matchbox doesn't get crushed in your pocket. So I've got one here. Get the matches out. Leaves the side open so you can strike your match. There we go. Let's hope the smoke detector doesn't go off. Protects your matchbox, and this one was produced in Arras in France, and it says 1914, 1918 on it. End of the war. Of course, you could get service medals. You could apply for these. These are the British War Medal and the Victory Medal. Now it says on the back 1914 to 1919. This confuses a lot of people when they look at war memorials. They say, was it 14 to 19? Well, it was just an armistice in November 1918, and there were British troops intervening in Russia in the Civil War there up until 1919. So, end of the war. Hopefully 1918 it will finish for you, but you might end up in Russia or convalescing or occupation duty up until 1919. And here we have a replica of a nurse's cap. What happened immediately after the war was, of course, the Spanish flu pandemic. It's been mentioned a bit in recent months. It's called the Spanish flu because Spain wasn't involved in the war, and so Spain was the only place not censoring their news, so the only place that was mentioning that this horrendous flu was going around. And one of my great uncles was called Bertram Mitchell, and someone sent me a copy of letters that he wrote. And he is a nurse, and he writes, "I received your letter and I'm very sorry I've not written before, but I've been through the most painful experience I've ever had. I was called home to find my boy was dying. We watched him for nearly a fortnight, but he died a week yesterday, and I buried him, and I've been at the hospital for the following 18 weeks. I hope I'm improving, and they say I'll eventually be cured." So Bertram worked in a hospital and ended up being ill, catching the thing himself and being in hospital for ages with the horrendous Spanish flu that went round at the end of World War I. It's that old adage, the curse may you live through interesting times, and my relatives who lived through this, luckily lived through this, so I'm here, lived through some very interesting and some horrible times, unfortunately. But I'd like to say they all survived, though Fred's lungs were shot through all the gas he inhaled on the Western Front. So, hope you enjoy that little tour through some of the battlefield-related artefacts and things from the home front and little stories there of World War I. Thank you for listening.